Preacher Season 2, Episode 3, Damsels. Now this episode, of course, starts off with our trio actually making it to New Orleans. They're sticking together for about maybe 6 minutes because they go to their very first club. They say, we're looking for God. That just so happens to be the exact crazy phrase that they need to end up going behind, this club and going into like this crazy back alley and into this super secret room where this old dude gives them like dildos and stuff, and then they open up a curtain and it's this woman holding a leash and a dude dressed like a Dalmatian. So of course that's not what they're looking for, but that just so happens to be the perfect phrase for the very first club they go to. They have this weird little moment where it's like, alright, well, Cassidy was actually going to pay the dude, and it's like, this isn't what we're looking for, so they leave. And they have this odd moment that didn't really have any effect on this episode, but it's hard to say if it was just like a weird preacher moment or if it was actually relevant to the story. But as they're leaving, they have like this ominous close-up on the person in the dog costume, and they have like this tone playing. It's like you're supposed to, see like the intensity in their eyes and stuff. And I was like, okay, well that means they're somehow, somewhere on the right track. But unless I missed the line, that had nothing to do with anything that happened in this episode. Like they didn't reference, like I said, unless I missed it, I don't believe they referenced like that person being in the dog costume as being one of the people in the white suits or anything. So I don't really know what the point of that scene was. It seemed like it was meant to be really significant, and maybe it still is. It's just going to be, in the next episode. But they had like this ominous moment where you do like a really intense close-up, and then nothing really came of that moment, at least, not in this episode. But after that, they basically split up. Tulip says she's, of course, because she's freaking out because she knows that Victor is kind of looking for her. She knows a bunch of people because she's from that area. So she's like, all right, well, I'm just not feeling good, so I'm going to go get a motel. And I'll see you guys later. And so of course Cassidy finds out like, oh, she's taking off to get a motel. Well, she can't do that. I initially thought he was going just because, they have like their little secret thing going on, but it was actually because he happens to have sort of a friend actually in New Orleans. So they end up staying with this guy who seems to own like a former, like he owns like almost a whole plantation type thing. It was really odd because I was like, oh, they're staying at his place, and they go through like one entrance, but then they show them like walking around, and there's a part where they're walking outside when Tulip's about to leave, and I was like, this is like a full-on like hotel or something, and I was like, this dude actually owns like a giant compound or something. So they end up staying there, and not much happens with Cassidy's friend. He only speaks French. For whatever reason, even though Cassidy has this friend who speaks specifically French, Cassidy somehow does not know any French like whatsoever, which I thought was crazy. I was like, he's a 100-something-year-old vampire. He didn't learn, like, somehow he made this relationship not knowing a single bit of French. Like, he knew nothing. And I was like, that's just really weird. Like, he should know French at this point, or at least something. And it was just like, yeah, I didn't get any of that. This is Tulip, and he just introduces them to each other, and it's like, we're gonna stay here, and that was pretty much it. And I was like, that's so odd. And I'm assuming at some point it's gonna be revealed that this dude totally speaks English or something like that, and they have some odd relationship. It's very weird. It just just kind of kicks off, and there's nothing to it. But I'm curious to see how that ends up playing out, if it'll be significant or not. But it's like, this dude's letting them stay there, and Tulip seemed right. It was like, I feel like this dude actually hates Cassidy's guts, but for whatever reason, let him stay. He could have that fear, because, Cassidy is a vampire, so he could know that he's a vampire, and he has that fear, and it was just like, I thought we'd get some backstory there, like how this is one of his good friends. It was like, nope, this dude only speaks French, and somehow Cassidy knows nothing of French. And so they don't really communicate all that well. It's very odd. They must have some sort of tie. I feel like it's more than they just met as friends, especially considering, the language barrier there. So I feel like there's got to be some other connection. Like there's a third character that kind of brought those two together. And maybe that person died off or, something like that. And, they just remained friends kind of afterwards. But Cassidy and Tulip end up staying at this guy's place. Eventually, Tulip decides that she's going to take off because before they even get to Cassidy's friend's place, she runs into like this older lady who, used to bake her food and stuff like that, and she still remembered like what her favorite flavor was and everything. And, she talks to her and stuff like that. It's like, oh, it's great to be back. I was just, out of town and stuff. And of course, that was step one. She's like, crap, I've officially been seen by someone who knows me, which means she most likely is going to talk to someone else who knows me, and Victor will officially know that I'm in town now. So she eventually decides to just give herself up, And I don't know how they knew she was at the laundromat. Maybe it was just like one of those automatic things where it was like, okay, well, this is like one of their normal meeting spots or something like that. I don't know. But she goes there and she gets some cigarettes, and of course the people, walk up behind her and stuff, and that's pretty much how things end for her storyline. So, of course, I'm excited to see where that goes, what we get with the Victor character, and how she's going to end up, making her way out of it, although it seems like it's going to be pretty much all-out chaos with, Cassidy and Jesse coming in to be like, okay, well, they're bothering you, and, we're like a little trio, so we'll just wipe everybody out. I feel like that's pretty much how it's going to end, it's Preacher. So, we'll see if that does end up coming to fruition, but she basically gives herself up going to that laundromat, and that's kind of how things end for her. So, she's taken off by Victor's people, led to Victor. Cassidy's doing his thing where he's just walking around in like this odd butterfly shirt. Like, my girlfriend and her sister were randomly like watching the episode with me, and they're like, what is he doing wearing that shirt? But like, Cassidy always has like just weird random stuff on. So, he's just there. He's just at his buddy's place, so I'm sure he'll have more to do in the next episode once it's like, hey, Tulip's officially gone. But Jesse's mission to find God leads him pretty much throughout the entire night, going from bar to bar saying, have you seen God? And searching for God. And eventually, he gets a bit of a clue from this random bartender. And he's like, maybe you should talk to the singer at this one place. So he ends up going to her, and he ends up helping her because it seems like she's being attacked by, the group of people in the white suits. So he ends up fighting them. He uses Genesis and stuff, and he talks with her, and she explains how, she has certain connections to this group and how they're kind of crazy, and that's kind of why she seemingly, took off and everything, because it was like, oh, they kind of said the same thing you said, like looking for God and, this and that. So it's like, okay, he helped save her, she takes her baby, and they take off. And then it turns out she's one of the people in the white suits. She's basically one of them. So that was an interesting moment. She takes off the wig and stuff, and it's like, alright, well, he definitely has Genesis. Like, he makes her stop as far as kissing him and stuff, and he explains exactly what it is because he thinks he can trust her. Like, okay, well, we have a common enemy in this random group of people in white suits because they're searching for God as well, but they're kind of doing it in a much crazier way. So he assumes that he can trust her. He kind of explains everything about Genesis. He uses Genesis, and so she knows that it's real 100%, and it's like, yep, this is definitely happening. We'll send it up, to Samson. And I thought that was interesting. And then it goes to their leader, who I assume was Samson, which I thought they were kind of making a joke, because Samson, and then they cut to a guy who had no hair. You have to like look up that whole story. But it ends up being like, this leader, and he has kind of a weird name. It was kind of a weird name to me. But they cut to him as the leader, and then of course it has Jesse's name. And I was like, okay, well, that's, Jesse's name was like that second file, and I was so curious. I was like, what the heck is Pig? Like, they have just Pig by itself. It's not like a nickname, or it's like this person, Pig, and then their last name, it was just like Pig. And then Jesse Custer, like an actual human being. So I was so confused, like, what in the world is Pig? Like, that's all I could think of was like, what is Pig? What in the world is that? Like, those are two very different types of files, where it's like a guy with the actual name and the power to control people, including angels and stuff, and then just Pig on top of that. So it was very confusing to me, because I'm like, I feel like it probably won't make a difference. It's hard to say what really matters and what doesn't matter in Preacher sometimes, because everything's so crazy. You never know what's really going to be relevant. But I was just like, that's so weird. What is Pig? So that's all I could think about during that sequence. But, it sent up the food chain, and now they will officially be coming after Jesse, which also means they'll be coming after Cassidy and Tulip, because, they're a little trio. So I feel like what's going to happen is they're going to deal with Victor and stuff in the next episode, maybe get a little bit more info on the people in white suits. I don't know if they'll actually end up attacking in the next episode or not, but I was like, okay, well, that should be interesting. They'll take on Victor's people, then the people in the white suits, and I would assume that the people in the white suits are going to be like the main villains, and Victor's like the sub-villain. I've kind of mentioned that before based on the trailer that we've seen. It's like, okay, Victor's people, relevant, but not like God relevant, and then the people in white suits who already know a little bit about what's going on anyway with God leaving and some weird stuff like that. It's like, okay, well, clearly that's very important, so something is going on with them as well. So very curious how things are going to play out there. Of course, we do have one other storyline in this episode, and that is Eugene. That is actually how we start the episode, with Eugene constantly living through what's basically the worst moment of his life. And he goes through it starts off with like the phone call and the girl saying like she's crying. He's like, Eugene, I need you. And he's riding his bike. He's super happy in like his little setting sun t-shirt, or like raglan shirt. And he's just having a great time. He's like, cool, she needs me, I'm gonna be there. He's smiling, he's taking his bike. He gets up to the room and she's about to kill herself. She has the shotgun. She has like a 9 or 14 page suicide note or something crazy like that. And so he reads through some of this stuff. He's like, okay, well, this bear goes to this friend, and then everything else is to remain here like a shrine. And, all this stuff. All this stuff is detailed in her suicide note. And then, of course, we kind of get a bit of the answer as to why everyone really blames him for what happened to her. Because before it was just kind of like, he was this odd freak who was like stalking her, and like that's kind of how everyone assumed it. It was almost like she didn't want him, so he knocked her out, or tried to kill her but sent her into a crazy coma, and then tried to kill himself, and of course it didn't work. And we see that what really played out is that she wanted to kill herself. He stopped her and was like, you don't need this, and unfortunately that was like the big evidence right there that she chose to do that herself. And, they burned all the pages of the suicide note. And so he's freaking out because her mom comes back, and this is, of course, after she shoots herself, which is really, that's just harsh. Like, it's already enough to see someone, like, kill themselves, or at least attempt to kill themselves in front of you. But it's got to be, like, a million times worse when you stop them and say, like, you got stuff to live for, and then you kiss them, and they're like, ew. And that sends them back into wanting to kill themselves, and she's like, ugh. And then she puts the gun back to her head and tries to shoot herself, and does. She doesn't die, but, she went back to, like, I really got nothing to live for if he's trying to kiss me, and it's like, there's something in there that's got to just make it way worse. But, of course, he tries to, get out of the situation when her mom, like, knocks on the door. It's like, why is this door locked? And it was crazy, because he's, like, trying to put brain bits back in her head. I was like, what in the world is he doing? He was freaking out so bad, and it's like he was trying to leave and jump out the window, and it's like, well, I'm kind of screwed. And at that point, it was like, there's nothing I can do here. And so he just tried to kill himself. And that was it, because I just assumed he was going to get blamed, which is pretty much what happened, because he ended up surviving. So it was just crazy, like, he's reliving that moment. And of course, it ends up being hell. It's just like with the Saint of Killers, reliving like that worst moment over and over and over again. And then eventually he kind of snaps out of it for a second. This woman opens the door, tells him not to move. And then eventually we end up getting this scene at the end of the episode where he actually does end up escaping, and of course he ends up running into Hitler. So that's where he's at right now. He's in hell with Hitler, and I think they showed one other character in the promo as well, but Hitler's kind of explaining to him like, yeah, this is pretty much just like your worst memory repeating over and over and over again. That's what hell is. So they're kind of conversing back and forth, and it seems like he's going to kind of be doing some jumping through like Hitler's odd, like, worst memory and stuff. So I'm curious how that's going to ultimately play out, because it seemed like there was someone else's memory that was also in there. I believe it was Hitler's, but it could have also been like the other person that they showed as well from the promo. But definitely excited to see where Eugene is headed, or Artspace if you prefer. So definitely excited for his storyline, and I know that he gets out of hell at some point, because otherwise there would be no reason to really show that story. So I know that somehow that ends up happening where he gets out of hell. So I'm very curious how that's supposed to play out. I don't know, it would be weird, but if somehow they end up killing the Saint of Killers, and then someone else has to take their place, and maybe it's like, oh, well, here's a little twist for you. Maybe we'll make Eugene the new Saint of Killers, and then, that way it makes it a bit harder for Jesse to, like, fight back against him, because it's someone, like, he already did something horrible, too. Like, he sent him to hell, really for no good reason. So, like he's the only reason he's in hell. So, I don't know. I kind of doubt that'll happen. But you never know. Like, he's got to get out at some point. Something's got to happen. There's some way for him to escape. And it's Preacher. It's obviously, like, this alternate universe. I mean, Tom Cruise is dead. In that universe, he exploded. So who knows? Maybe Hitler comes back to life with Eugene and is like, hey, cool, I'm out. I'm just going to do my thing now on this new planet. I don't know. But it's Preacher. I wouldn't be that surprised if that ended up happening. But I'm very excited that we get to see what's going on with him. And I'm glad he has a much bigger portion in the next episode. Because this was just like, our little introduction to him. Like, here's what's really happening with him in hell. And I'm excited to see that expand and kind of get some information on how he eventually ends up escaping, or at least trying to escape. So I'm looking forward to that. But really enjoyed this episode. I like the different storylines that we got. Very excited for what they're going to do with this whole Victor thing in the next episode. We have the people in the white suits officially coming into play as well for this episode. So, got our two big groups. We got a little taste of what Eugene is going through. So I'm definitely excited for the next episode. But of course, we'd love to know what you guys thought about it. So please comment below. Let me know your favorite parts, least favorite parts. And I definitely want to know how you guys think things are going to play out with Victor and his people. I would assume, like I said, it's pretty much just going to be straight up chaos. You have a vampire and a dude who can make people do whatever they want, and they can affect, multiple people at a time. I pretty much just assume they're going to go in and be like, okay, well, Tulip doesn't want to deal with you idiots, and then they just kill everybody, or at least stop them. I mean, Jesse might not kill them, but he might make them, forget, or something simple like that. But I feel like some people will end up dying before it gets to, that calm solution. There's going to be some chaos. That's just almost guaranteed. So that's my theory on it, but it's hard to say if that'll all get solved in the next episode. I don't think so. I feel like that might last for maybe 2 or 3 more episodes. I could be wrong, of course, but they're just now officially introducing Victor in the next episode. So I think maybe 2 full episodes with him, possibly 3, and then they'll officially, solve that problem, and then they'll have, the people in the white suits coming in as the next, really big thing for the season, and then, whatever Eugene is doing in hell, that'll be the other big story of the season as well. But that's just my guess. Of course, eventually the Saint of Killers does have to show up. Jesse does use his ability a couple of times in this episode, which they revealed in the last one. That's how they're being tracked down, because the Saint of Killers, he comes along whenever Genesis is used. So he used it on the people in the van to tell them to stop the truck, and then he used it on the woman to stop her from kissing him. So he did it twice. So I would have to assume that this dude is going to be on his way, and he knows exactly where to go. We don't really know the exact distance of where they were, from this random casino place. So we don't know the exact distance, so they could do any amount of time. He seems to only walk. He never seems to utilize vehicles or anything. It's I just walk and that's it. So they could easily say it just took him a couple episodes, so he might not even show up in the next couple, and that gives him time to deal with Victor and all that stuff. But eventually he does have to show up, and I would have to assume that they're going to, leave New Orleans as well, and they won't find out there and have to move on to the next place. But Jesse does get another extra little clue. I forgot to mention this as he was going through all this information just before things actually get good for him, seemingly. He gets to hear the song, A Walk to the Peak, and the guy's he's starting to get the rhythm of it. He's yeah, man, it's the end of the world. And that's kind of, at least what he says that song represents. So I thought that was an interesting little moment that they had, where it's that's really odd that that's what he would say for the song that God really loved. So I like that moment, but like I said, want to know what theories you guys have for how things are about to play out in the next couple of episodes, and of course want to know what you guys thought about this one. So please comment below, let me know, and thanks for watching.